Hi, it's just Bob once again. Just kind of freeballing here about things, and I had all of this since I got up today, and it seems like every morning it's getting to be kind of a new experience. But the I turned on, like I usually do, YouTube because I like to look at things that are happening, and just about everything in my queue was popping up with the same theme. Now, the algorithms, that's what they do. They follow what you like and then they start giving you more of it. The only thing is that this isn't something I've been looking at on YouTube. It's something I've been following for decades. And that's how to use alternative power. And so I've been building and testing all sorts of different ways of collecting power and saving it and using it at a later date, or just use it all the time, but having a system that keeps it fully charged all the time. So, and the options are very, there are actually, there's quite a number of different ways to do it, but you have to be at the right location to make them work. So for me, I am always looking for a piece of property that in my area, say if I was over in eastern Washington looking for a piece of land to live on, and I wanted to be off grid and totally self sufficient, I would look for a piece that has a sloping hill with a creek running down through the middle of it or somewhere on the property that you can access, and it is year round, ideally. Doesn't need to be, but ideally it would be. So that would be one thing on the property I'm looking for. The other thing is the slope has to be facing south so that you get full access to the summer here or the sunlight when you're not in the summer here. When you're in the winter time, the sun is very low in the sky and it makes a very low arc across the southern sky. It comes up in the southeast and goes in the southwest. Summertime, it's the opposite. Now we're way up. The sun is setting way up into the north. If you were to lay out north and south on a grid, and if I took it back to my Navy days, it would be the sunset or the sun rises in the summer at about 15 degrees, maybe at the very most 20 degrees off of the North Pole in the east, and it would set then about 330 degrees on the compass in the west. And this is in the summer. In the winter, it's reversed. It's on the total other end. It's setting at about what would be let's see, 180, about 160 degrees, maybe a little bit more, maybe 150 degrees in the southeast, and on the compass roll on the other side it would be like 250, somewhere in there. So that area in those times of the year is where your sunlight is coming from in an arc going east to west. And for us in the winter, you want to be able to get it in the south, and in the summer the whole sky will give you enough to run it, but you want to have it running a little more flat, not quite as much slope as you would in the winter. But anyway, that's just one aspect. The creek is the main thing is that if you set up a solar array and you have a battery bank to power your house, and let's say you have a Tesla wall and you can generate 10,000 watt hours or whatever they have in them, and they run about $12,000 to install, but they have a finite life, and there are batteries that are more efficient. They're just not as portable as maybe the Tesla batteries, because you can, it depends on what you're going to build. But anyway, so you have a solar bank that is feeding a battery bank that is energizing the house. Now, in the nighttime, the solar doesn't work. So this whole thing goes off. So you got to have a battery system that will last you through the night. So you can know how much you need to use. In a typical house, you get 200 amp service. And it's broken down into, a bunch of different circuits. So the system runs on a 240 volt. And we split that at the box and make it two 120 systems. And then each of those gets broken down into how many amps you're going to draw out of each fuse. So the electrical system has to have a battery that's cued in to keep that power system running at nighttime. So now if you have that river or any kind of moving water that you can attach a turbine to, you can now generate 24/7 electricity out of that stream, put it into a battery bank and send it into the main battery at home. Or you don't really need a battery bank, you just need a capacitor or something to even the flow, and send it back to the battery at the house to augment that power. So now the battery's bank is charging fast or faster. And now add wind. The wind factor is, you can have it on your roof, you can have it in your yard. There's all sorts of different wind generation tools out there. And most of them you can make in your garage. But it's just, you gotta, if you're in some city, then you've got codes to deal with. So if you're out there in the country where I want to be, where there's off-grid, and be self-sufficient in my retirement, it is going to have, all of them is what I'm looking for. The other things that we don't know that they used to teach in shop class and science class, they tell you all this stuff about galvanic response and stuff. And that's when you have a sheet of copper and you have a space between them and a sheet of zinc or even aluminum. And the water that drops from the sky and the rain that flows over your roof, as it is going over that copper and zinc and copper and zinc and copper and zinc, it is discharging a current. That also can go in that battery system. When it's raining, you're generating electricity for your house. And it gets to a point when you got them all, if you have wind, water, solar, then you've got the trifecta. So now your only thing is, what are you going to do with all that power? Because it's going to charge your battery bank after it's charged. It's going to keep wanting to put more in there. So you're just going to have to shut everything down until you use up some, because you can't fill in a full cup. So the thing that you got to have to consider is that you're going to need to start adding to the battery bank, or find something that will hold that energy, not necessarily electricity, hold the energy for a period of time. So now there's other options for that. The solar can not only help generate electricity through the solar array, but you can also, with that, generate heat. So if you have they make a tube you can purchase, a glass tube or plexiglass that is usually about 4 or 5 feet long, and it's probably, 3 inches in diameter. And inside of the center of that runs a water line, a copper tube filled with water or some kind of liquid. It could be even antifreeze. But what it's going to do is, inside that glass tube surrounding that copper tube, it's a vacuum. And the inside of the glass tube is coated so that if from the inside it is a mirror finish, so that when heat comes in, it reflects back. It doesn't reflect out or go through. It keeps reflecting within the chamber of the vacuum, heating that water that is in that pipe to the temperature of steam. And so then that steam goes through the pipe, and now you can construct out of just a bunch of sand in a big barrel buried in the ground, and you can run a coil of that steam through that sand box, that barrel full of sand, and that heat is going to dissipate into the sand. It's going to dissipate out into the ground around it, but it's going to hold that heat for a really long time. I mean, it'll be there all night long. It can heat your house all night long. It can turn a turbine that's going to charge into that battery system again. You're covered from every which way from Wednesday, man. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And this is all the stuff they don't want us to know. But if you do a little research, and I'll tell you, this YouTube thing, you can look it up. And if nothing else, go watch Robert Murray Smith from England, who has passed away now, but his files are online, and you can go through. He had his YouTube that did nothing but experiment with producing or not producing. You don't create energy, really. You're drawing it out of something else and converting it into the energy you want it to be. But the earth is the energy. The atmosphere is the energy. It doesn't die, it just changes. So that, learning about that energy, Robert was a godsend for me. I mean, he had a way of explaining things in a manner that was just crystal clear. And then he would build a scale model of it, and you sat through the whole construction. And for me, I was doing it along with him. I've got wind generation stuff stacked in the garage, and I got all this other gear from experiments I've done to pull out. Right now, I have a piece of property that I suited all my needs, but they weren't the same needs I now am looking to fill. I have a piece of property with a house that is my size, and it is my design, and the property is set up in my design, and the property was chosen because of how it reacted to the energy of the environment and how I wanted to live. So I live in this area that I was aware of and that we call the blue hole. So there's a weather vortex created by a mountain range just outside of us, on one side of us, where the weather pattern comes from. And it creates a vortex that we have blue sky 300 days out of the year. Well, not necessarily all blue, but blue over our heads, more or less. Enough to where we get 12 inches of rain a year instead of somebody 5 miles down the road that gets 36. It makes a difference when you study the environment and the energy and take advantage of it. Plus, for some reason, nobody seemed to want this piece of property. It sat here. I was looking at it for 7 years. I used to live just up the street from it. Every day I drove by it on my way to work. And I couldn't figure out why nobody was buying this piece of property. They didn't do any research. They just took the face of it as it was written long ago in things, and they assumed that was still valid. And it isn't. It turned out this little piece of property is a gem. And I have my own private beach down here that, well, it's our neighborhood beach. It's gated. So we go down, have a beach where there's hardly anybody down there, hardly ever. And I do a lot of these little small experiments down on that beach because, especially with wind and sun, because we get a lot of sun here, and we also get a lot of wind. So down on the beach, I could power up a power station down there that would give us full power whenever we wanted it. And when you go to the beach, you could plug into it. But like I said, it's a community beach for the neighborhood. There's 32 of us that share that beach. So that's how I always run. I'm looking for other things when I'm looking at something. I'm trying to make things, or I don't want to do things unless it has the ability to fulfill all of my three needs. So wind, water, and light. And those three things, that trifecta, whenever I find that property, I'll take it. And I'll be happily finishing out my days on that little self-sufficient piece of land. But then I have a real aversion in the last 10 years. I just don't like being in the populace. There's too much energy. I mean, there's, aside from the people, there's the noise if you're in the city. Even on the island, I've sat here and made videos, and I had so many cars drive by while I'm trying to make the video. It was just annoying. And myself, I don't really pay attention to it enough to hear it. It doesn't bother me. So, but when I heard the video, and I went, oh man, I didn't know that was in there. Or somebody starts up a mower. But I've lived on land. When I was a kid, we moved from the city to in town, but right at the edge of town. Our backyard fence, when we moved into the town I grew up in, the backyard fence, there was not another building as far as you could see. It was just cattle ranches, one after the other. And it went on for miles and miles and miles. So I always had that ability to sit in the backyard and then just create a world out there in that emptiness. And today I'm back to that same thing. I just don't know where I want to go, because it needs to have my three elements. There aren't many places you can do that. But I've got them all marked, and I'll start looking for it before too long. So I just, for some reason, everything was coming at me this morning that had to do with these three things. I don't know how many videos are in that queue, and they're all the same topic. And it's just, telling me as a synchronicity that I'm on the right track. I don't have to watch all the videos. That'd be a waste of time. But I do know that just the fact that they're there, there's an energy pushing me in that direction. So that means my attention is going to be put in that area, because I feel like I'm getting close to making that change, that move. I know I'm pretty close to making a decision that I want to do something with this house other than live in it. I either want to turn it into a B&B or just get a renter or sell it. I don't know what to do, but the economy here is getting to be stifling, and the island isn't what it used to be when I moved here. And it's probably not the island that's changed as much as me. I've lived here on this island since 2004. So 22 years. And I now know it like the back of my hand. It's just, this is my world. I very seldom go off the island. So reading the energy is the key. And I got somebody walking by with two dogs. Oh, that was fun. They walked past the neighbor's house just now, and I noticed, but the dogs over there aren't out. we would have had a real bark fest if they were, because the two dogs that just went by were the same breed. They're what do they call them? Golden Labs. Yeah. Anyway, that's synchronistic too for my day. I love dogs. Anyway, just another chat. Listen to the old man rave on. Have a good one. Thanks a lot for watching.